I never imagined my mother's 70th birthday would end in complete silence. 20 people sat around the table that afternoon, forks frozen halfway to their mouths, eyes wide, the air heavy with disbelief. The smell of roasted chicken and grilled corn hung in the air, untouched. No one said a word. It was as if time itself had stopped. That silence, I caused it. And I'd do it again if I had to. But before that moment, before the truth ripped my life apart, the day had started perfectly, almost peacefully. That Saturday morning, I woke up early, just after 7. The soft Arizona sunlight slipped through the curtains, painting our bedroom in a calm golden glow. Laura was still asleep beside me, her brown hair spilling across the pillow like a soft river. She'd gotten back home the night before from what she said was a work trip to Seattle. Her suitcase still sat by the door half open. I didn't think much of it. Laura's job as a human resources consultant often sent her to different cities, Denver, Chicago, Portland, always for training or client meetings. I leaned over and kissed her forehead before leaving the bed. She mumbled something in her sleep, the way she always did, and turned to the other side. I smiled. I thought it was just another ordinary Saturday. I drove to the bakery my mom loved, the one that always smelled like butter and cinnamon, and picked up 2 loaves of her favorite French bread. She'd told me not to bother, said she already had plenty, but it was tradition. My mom, Helen Reed, loved simple gestures. That's something I got from her. When I got back home, the kids were already awake. Emily, my 13-year-old daughter, was sprawled across the couch watching some teen drama, and Lucas, my 10-year-old son, was building something with Legos on the rug. They greeted me with sleepy smiles and hugs. "Grandma's birthday today," I said, setting the bread on the counter. "I know," Emily replied without looking up. "I already wrapped her gift." She'd drawn a portrait of my parents last night, and even though she pretended not to care, I knew she'd worked on it for hours. Everything felt normal, comfortably predictable. I took a shower, got dressed, and loaded the car with the gifts and food we were bringing. Laura came downstairs a bit later, looking stunning as always, wearing a pale floral dress and a soft smile that could have convinced anyone she was the perfect wife and mother. She poured herself a cup of coffee, kissed my cheek, and said, "Let's make today special for your mom." I remember smiling back at her, believing her. The drive to my parents' house was short, about 20 minutes through the quiet streets of Phoenix. The weather was perfect, sunny but not too hot, with that soft breeze that feels like grace itself. My parents' single-story house had been our gathering spot for decades. Every birthday, holiday, or Sunday lunch, that backyard filled with laughter, food, and music. When we arrived, the place was already alive with noise. My brother Mark and his wife Claire were setting up the grill with my dad Thomas. My mom moved around the kitchen, humming and laughing as she arranged the dishes. "Daniel," my dad called when he saw me, "you brought the bread." "Of course," I said, grinning. "You know Mom would never forgive me if I forgot." He laughed, clapping me on the back. Everything about that moment was good, honest, warm, alive, and Laura blended right in. She greeted everyone, hugged my parents, helped my sister-in-law arrange the salad. Watching her then, no one could have guessed the truth. Not even me. The kids ran off to play with their cousins while the adults talked under the shade of the pergola. Laura was radiant, laughing easily, complimenting my mother's garden, talking about her clients and her projects. If someone had asked me then if I trusted my wife, I would have said yes, without hesitation. And that's the cruel part about betrayal. It doesn't arrive with thunder. It slips in quietly, disguised as normal life. At that moment, I had no idea that within 3 hours, the world I'd built for 15 years would fall apart, right in front of everyone I loved. It was just past 2 in the afternoon when everything began to unravel. My dad and I were standing by the grill, seasoning the chicken, laughing about how he still refused to use any spice other than salt, pepper, and garlic. The air smelled of charcoal and barbecue sauce. Children's laughter floated from the backyard, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Too perfect, maybe. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. At first I ignored it, probably a message from a coworker or one of the cousins running late. But it buzzed again, this time longer, more insistent. I wiped my hands on a napkin and pulled it out. An unfamiliar number. No name, no message, just a photo. I tapped it open, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. It was Laura. She was standing in the lobby of a fancy hotel, one I didn't recognize, the kind with gold chandeliers, marble floors, and massive glass windows. But it wasn't the setting that caught my attention. It was him. A man. his hand resting on her waist, their faces close, too close. The kind of closeness that only comes when there's something more. My heart stopped. My throat went dry. Below the picture, there was a message. Thought you should know. My sister saw them together in Denver last month. He's married too. You deserve the truth. I just stood there, staring at my phone, the noise of the party fading into nothing. All I could hear was my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Hey, Daniel, you okay? My dad asked, his voice distant. I muttered something, I don't even remember what, and walked away, phone still in my hand. My steps felt heavy, like my body was moving on its own. I slipped into the house and locked myself in the small hallway bathroom, the one with the yellow tiles my mom never replaced. I sat down on the closed toilet lid, staring at the picture again and again, zooming in until there was no doubt. It was Laura. Same hair, same necklace, same dress she'd worn on that Denver trip last month. My stomach turned. The world felt smaller, like the air was being sucked out of the room. Maybe it's innocent, I whispered to myself, even though deep down I already knew it wasn't. I felt something I can't quite describe, a mixture of cold rage, disbelief, and heartbreak, all fighting for space in my chest. After a few minutes I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I needed to know the truth, all of it, right now. Laura had left her bag in the car she always did. Inside, I knew I'd find her laptop, the same one she said she used for client presentations. I walked outside, trying not to look suspicious. Everyone was still laughing in the backyard, oblivious. I made my way to the car parked by the curb, opened the back door, and pulled out her brown leather bag. My fingers felt numb as I unzipped it. There it was. Her laptop. I sat in the driver's seat, closed the door, and took a deep breath. The car was hot under the afternoon sun, but I barely noticed. I opened the laptop. It asked for a password. For a moment, I hesitated. I wasn't the kind of man who snooped. For 15 years, I never once checked her messages, her calls, anything. But that version of me, the trusting husband, was gone now. I typed Emily 1110, our daughter's birthday. It unlocked immediately. My heart sank. I opened her email, scrolling through her inbox, pretending I was doing something normal even though my world was about to collapse. I typed a word in the search bar, Denver. Dozens of emails appeared. One stood out, from someone named Ethan Cole. I clicked it. Love, I can't wait to see you again. The days without you are unbearable. Then her reply, just a few more weeks, Ethan. We'll sort everything out, I promise. The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears. I scrolled further. There were more messages, older ones, more intimate, more careless. Photos, plans, hotel reservations. The Seattle trip was perfect. Can't wait for Chicago next month. You make me feel alive again, Laura. You're the only one who really understands me. Marcus, he's a good man, but he's predictable. With you, I finally feel free. My hands began to tremble so badly I almost dropped the laptop. Predictable, that's what she thought of me. The man who paid the bills, cooked dinner, tucked the kids in every night. Boring. Predictable. Disposable. I scrolled more, each line cutting deeper than the last. Once I get custody of the kids, we can finally start our new life together. Custody. She was planning to take my children, Emily and Lucas, away from me, to build a new life with a stranger. My head started spinning. The screen blurred. I couldn't breathe. I closed the laptop, staring at my reflection in the dark screen. I didn't recognize the man looking back at me. His eyes were cold, empty, broken. I put the laptop back in the bag and sat there in silence, gripping the steering wheel, trying to make sense of the life I thought I had. In 15 minutes, I discovered that the woman I loved was a stranger, and everything I believed about my marriage was a lie. But even then, part of me wasn't angry yet. Not fully. Not until I walked back to the yard and saw her laughing, carefree, radiant, passing a bowl of salad to my mother as if nothing was wrong. That's when the anger came. Hot, heavy, unstoppable. I realized I couldn't carry this truth alone. And before the day ended, everyone would know. I don't remember walking back into the house. One minute, I was sitting in the car trying to breathe. The next, I was standing by the kitchen window staring through the glass at my family laughing in the yard. There she was, Laura, my wife, my everything, laughing, smiling, passing plates of salad and chatting about a new Netflix show with my sister-in-law, the woman who, 3 hours earlier, had kissed me goodbye like nothing was wrong. I pressed my palm against the cool countertop, my stomach twisting. Every word I'd just read echoed inside my skull like a scream I couldn't silence. You make me feel alive again. Marcus is a good man, but he's predictable. Once I get custody of the kids, each line tore another piece out of me. I had to sit down. My knees were weak, and for a second, I thought I'd pass out. How long had she been doing this? How many lies had I swallowed with a smile? Seattle, Denver, Chicago, all those work trips, all those calls she said were client meetings. I felt sick, literally sick. I grabbed the edge of the table, trying not to throw up. The cruelest part wasn't just the betrayal. It was the ease with which she'd done it. The perfect calm, the laughter, the gentle way she'd touched my shoulder before leaving for those trips. There was no guilt in her eyes, no hesitation, just lies wrapped in smiles. I opened the fridge, pretending to look for something. I needed an excuse to be inside longer, to keep from falling apart in front of everyone. I grabbed a bottle of water, but my hands were shaking so badly I dropped it. It hit the floor and rolled under the table. "Daniel?" It was Claire's voice. "You okay?" I turned, forcing a small smile. "Yeah, just clumsy, I guess." She nodded and went back outside. I leaned against the counter, closing my eyes. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Every beat reminded me of what I'd seen, of the man whose hands had been on my wife. Ethan Cole, a name that now lived in my mind like poison. I wasn't just betrayed, I was replaced. 15 years of marriage, 2 children, a home built from nothing. All of it had been traded for hotel rooms and stolen kisses. I felt something break inside me, something I didn't even know could break. It wasn't anger at first. It was loss, a deep, hollow ache that made my chest feel empty. Then the questions came. What was wrong with me? Was I not enough? Did she ever really love me? Or was it all a performance, a convenient life she could walk away from once something more exciting came along? The truth burned. I walked back outside eventually, pretending everything was fine. My father caught my eye, and for a moment, I thought he could see it, the truth written on my face. He gave me a curious look, but I smiled, pretending I was fine. I wasn't. Every second I watched her move, talk, and laugh. The rage grew inside me. How could she stand there beside my mother, the woman who believed in loyalty more than anything, and lie so effortlessly? I looked at Emily and Lucas, running around the yard, their laughter bright and carefree. They had no idea that their mother's love story had ended long before today. And that's when I knew I couldn't keep it to myself. The truth had to come out, not tomorrow, not in private whispers or quiet arguments behind closed doors. Right here, right now. Because what she'd done wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. She'd dragged every person in that yard into a lie, made them believe in something that wasn't real. I pulled my phone out again, my thumb hovering over the photo. That one picture that had shattered everything. I looked at it one last time. I saved it. Then I took screenshots of every email, every word she'd ever written to Ethan. I wanted evidence, not out of revenge, but because when I spoke I wanted no one to doubt me. The truth would speak for itself. I put my phone away and stepped back toward the yard. The sunlight was softer now, filtering through the trees. My mom was calling everyone to the long table under the pergola. The smell of grilled chicken filled the air. My dad poured drinks, everyone laughing, clinking glasses. It should have been a beautiful moment. It should have been another memory we'd all look back on someday and smile. But I knew that before the day ended, that laughter would die, and no one would ever forget what was about to happen. I looked at Laura one more time. She smiled at me, the same smile that used to make my heart stop. But now it only made me feel cold. She had no idea that everything she'd built on lies was about to crumble in front of everyone she loved, and I was the one who would bring it all down. The table was set beautifully, white plates, crystal glasses, and my mom's favorite floral centerpiece. My mother, Helen, stood beautifully at the head of the table, grinning as everyone settled in. It was her 70th birthday, a milestone she'd looked forward to for months. The air buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. My dad looked proud, my brother cracked jokes, and the smell of grilled chicken filled the backyard. It was the kind of day that was supposed to become a cherished family memory, a celebration of love, time, and togetherness. But I sat there with a storm inside me. My hands were clenched under the table, gripping my phone so tightly it hurt. Laura was beside me, laughing at something my father said, her hand brushing mine. That small gesture, once comforting, now made my stomach twist. Her smile was flawless, her voice soft, sweet, practiced. She leaned closer and whispered, "You okay, Daniel? You seem tense." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd shared my life with, the woman I'd trusted with everything, sat inches from me, wearing the mask of innocence so perfectly it almost fooled me again. "I'm fine," I said quietly, but I wasn't. Then my mother stood, clearing her throat. She raised her glass and began a heartfelt toast. He spoke about my father, about their 45 years of marriage, about the hard times they overcame together, about how love, if nurtured, could survive anything. People laughed, clapped, wiped their eyes. And all I could think was, not all love survives anything. When she finished, people started clinking glasses, ready to sing happy birthday. But before the first note escaped anyone's lips, I stood up. My chair scraped against the patio floor, a harsh sound that sliced through the laughter. Every head turned toward me. At first, everyone smiled, thinking I was about to give a toast. But I wasn't smiling. Laura frowned. "Daniel, what are you doing?" I looked at my father, my mother, my brother, my children, everyone who believed in the perfect picture of our family. My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear my own voice when I finally spoke. "Before we sing," I said, "there's something I need to say." The air shifted, like the world was holding its breath. Laura gave a nervous laugh. "Honey, can this wait until after?" "No," I said firmly. "It can't." I looked around, meeting every pair of eyes before I spoke again. "About an hour ago, I found out that my wife, Laura, has been having an affair." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father's glass stopped midair. Mark froze, his expression hardening instantly. My sister-in-law looked like she'd forgotten how to breathe. Laura's eyes widened. What are you talking about?" I continued, my voice low but steady. "For the past 6 months, she's been meeting another man during her so-called work trips. Seattle, Denver, Chicago, all lies. His name is Ethan Cole." She shot to her feet, her chair toppling backward with a loud clang. "Daniel, stop it! This isn't the time or place!" "Oh, I think it is," I said sharply. "You lied in this very house, in front of these people, for months. You smiled, you hugged them, you played perfect wife and mother while planning a new life behind my back." Her face turned ghostly pale. "You went through my emails? That's a violation." I laughed bitterly. "A violation? Laura, you violated our marriage, our home, our trust. I have every right to the truth." I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots, the ones from her emails with Ethan. I handed it to her father, Henry. "Read it." His eyes scanned the screen. His jaw tightened, his shoulders sank. He passed it to his wife, Patricia, who started sobbing quietly. Laura turned toward me, her voice shaking. "Please, Daniel, don't do this here. We can talk in private." "No," I cut in. "Because your lies weren't private. You let everyone believe in something that wasn't real." Emily started crying softly. Lucas stared blankly at the table, confused and afraid. Laura reached toward them. "Sweetheart, don't," I said. My voice was quiet but final. "Don't touch them." For a few seconds no one moved. No one spoke. Even the breeze stopped. The only sound was the faint buzz of the grill cooling in the distance. Then, without another word, Laura turned and ran. She grabbed her car keys from the table, rushed through the side gate, and disappeared into the street. The sound of her car speeding away echoed down the block, then nothing. Just silence. The longest, heaviest silence of my life. I looked down, unable to meet anyone's eyes, until I felt arms around me. Emily, trembling, crying, clinging to me like she never wanted to let go. "Dad, is it true?" she whispered. I wrapped my arms around her and pulled Lucas close too. My voice broke as I said, "Yeah, baby, it's true, but we're going to be okay. I promise." No one sang happy birthday. No one touched their food. That celebration ended right there, in silence, heartbreak, and truth. And even though I destroyed the peace of that moment, deep down, I knew I'd done the right thing. Because some lies are too heavy to keep living with. When the sound of her car faded down the street, no one spoke, no one moved. The only thing I could hear was the faint hum of the evening, the wind brushing against the fence, the distant bark of a dog, the sound of my own heartbeat. My father slowly set his glass down. His eyes, usually calm, confident, were clouded with something I'd never seen before, sorrow. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for a napkin, wiping tears that wouldn't stop falling. Across the table, Laura's parents sat in stunned silence. Henry looked 10 years older in a single moment, his jaw clenched, his eyes unfocused. Patricia sobbed quietly, her hand pressed to her chest. My brother Mark stood up first, his chair scraped loudly against the patio. He walked over, put a firm hand on my shoulder, and said softly, You did what you had to, Daniel. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Emily was still crying, her face buried in my chest, her small hands gripping my shirt. Lucas clung to my arm, confused and scared. I wrapped them both tightly in my arms, trying to hold them, trying to hold us. But the truth had already torn through everything we were. My father cleared his throat, his voice breaking the silence. That's enough for today, he said softly. The food can wait. The party's over. He wasn't angry, just broken. My mother stood and hugged me, whispering, You're not alone, son. Whatever happens next, you're not alone. Her words almost undid me. For a moment I felt like a child again, lost and terrified, trying to make sense of something that could never make sense. That night, I didn't go home. Mark and his wife, Claire, insisted the kids stay with them. They said it would be better, away from the tension, the questions, the memories. So I drove alone. Not home, not anywhere, just drove. Through the streets of Phoenix, past quiet neighborhoods and glowing streetlights, I kept asking myself the same questions over and over. Why her? Why him? Was I not enough? But no answer came, only silence. At some point I parked by a lake on the edge of town. The water was down. The water was still, reflecting the moonlight. I sat there for an hour, maybe two, with the engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel, fighting the urge to scream. 15 years. 15 years of loyalty, laughter, struggles, dreams, gone. All replaced by 6 months of lies. I don't know how long I stayed there. When I finally went home, it was past midnight. The house felt foreign. The air smelled like her perfume, faint but unmistakable. Her shoes by the door, her mug on the counter, her pillow on our bed. All of it looked normal, but nothing was normal anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the half-open suitcase she'd left behind. Her clothes were still folded neatly inside. On top was a small framed picture, one of us at the beach years ago, before the kids were born. We looked happy. Real. I picked it up, ran my thumb over the glass, then set it face down on the nightstand. The next few days were a blur. Laura called dozens of times. I didn't answer. She texted, begging to talk, to explain, to fix this, but there was no explanation that could erase what I'd seen, what I'd read. The woman I married had made choices, deliberate ones, and now we were living in the wreckage. By Monday morning I had already called a lawyer. He was calm, professional, and quiet as he read through the screenshots I'd printed. After a long moment he said, You have a strong case. Custody will likely be yours, and financially you'll be protected. I nodded, but the words didn't bring comfort. They just felt like more proof that my marriage was truly over. Emily and Lucas came home 2 days later. Emily didn't say much. She barely looked at me for the first few hours, just sat on the couch staring at the TV with the volume low. That night, she finally spoke. Her voice was small, fragile. Dad, did Mom really love him? The question hit harder than anything I'd felt in days. I knelt beside her. I don't know, sweetheart, I said honestly. Maybe she thought she did. Maybe she didn't know what love was anymore. She wiped her eyes. Then I don't know how to love her anymore either. Those words broke me in ways I can't describe. Lucas was quieter, processing things in his own way. He asked fewer questions, just clung to me more. Whenever I moved to another room, I'd hear his small footsteps following behind. Mom left, he said once, his voice barely a whisper. But you stayed. I hugged him tightly. Always, I said. I'll always stay. A week later, I met with the lawyer again. We filed for divorce, irreconcilable differences, and infidelity. It felt surreal signing those papers. The same hand that once held hers in a church aisle now signing to end what we'd built. Laura kept trying to reach me. She sent letters, voice messages, apologies. She said she was sorry. She said she still loved me. She said she'd made a mistake. But love doesn't look like that. Love doesn't lie, doesn't plan to take your children away while you sleep beside it. So I stopped listening. Weeks turned into months. The whispers spread. Friends, co-workers, family. Phoenix wasn't small enough to keep secrets, not anymore. Laura's career suffered. Her reputation as a consultant, built on trust and professionalism, started to crumble. Clients didn't want to work with her. Her company reassigned her projects, and eventually she resigned. I didn't feel joy at her downfall, just emptiness. When you love someone that deeply, even their destruction hurts you. My father visited often, my mother called every day, Mark helped with the kids. Slowly, piece by piece, I began building something that resembled normal again. The kids started therapy. Emily cried less. Lucas began smiling again. The house still felt too quiet sometimes, but at least it was honest. And that, after everything, was something I could live with. Late one night, months later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Laura. She wrote, "Ethan left. He went back to his wife. I've lost everything, Daniel. I don't even recognize myself anymore. I'm sorry. I really am." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed 5 words, "I hope it was worth it," and that was the last time we ever spoke. That night, as I stood by the window watching the city lights flicker in the distance, I realized something. Sometimes truth doesn't set you free right away. Sometimes it burns you first until there's nothing left but ashes. But those ashes, they're where new life begins. It's strange how life keeps moving, even after it breaks. Days still turn into nights. Bills still come due. The sun still rises, even when you wish it wouldn't. The first months after the divorce were the hardest. Every morning I'd wake up and forget for a second that she was gone. Then I'd roll over, see the empty side of the bed, and remember all over again. The house felt like a museum of memories I didn't ask to keep. Her favorite mug, her perfume clinging to the hallway, the faint dent in the pillow she used. I thought about throwing everything out, but I didn't. Not yet. You can't rush healing, you just live through it. I went back to work sooner than I should have. At first, I moved like a ghost, answering emails, sitting through meetings, pretending to be fine. But work gave me structure, something solid to hold on to when everything else was gone. Every evening, I made dinner for the kids. Nothing fancy, spaghetti, tacos, breakfast for dinner on Fridays. We started a new ritual. We'd sit around the table and each share one good thing from our day. At first, Emily's answers were small. I got through the whole day without crying. Then they started to grow. I helped a friend with homework. "Dad, I aced my math test." Lucas's answers were simpler. "I built a rocket in Minecraft." Grandpa said my soccer kick was perfect. Those tiny victories became my lifeline. My parents were incredible. Dad came by every Saturday to take the kids out. Fishing, soccer, movie nights. Mom called every afternoon, always asking if I'd eaten, always reminding me, "Pain doesn't last forever, Daniel. Character does." Even Laura's parents reached out. Henry called once, his voice trembling. "Son, we're so sorry for everything our daughter did. Please don't punish the kids by keeping us away." I didn't. They saw Emily and Lucas often. They were victims too, of lies, of blindness, of love that looked the other way. Family became the glue that held the pieces together. I started therapy, something I never imagined I'd do. The first few sessions I barely spoke. I just sat there, staring at the carpet, replaying that photo in my mind. But slowly, words came. I told my therapist about the emails, the silence, the moment she ran, and he said something that stuck with me. "You can't heal from something you keep reliving. You have to start retelling it as something that happened to you, not something happening to you." That changed everything. I began journaling every night, not to remember but to let go. Some nights I wrote angry pages, other nights I wrote thank you notes to no one in particular. Thank you for the strength. Thank you for my kids. Thank you for surviving today. The kids kept me grounded. Emily started therapy too. She still didn't talk much about her mother, but she smiled more. One night, she came into my room and handed me a drawing. The 3 of us standing under a tree, holding hands. At the bottom, she'd written, "We're still a family." Lucas began sleeping through the night again. The nightmares faded. He joined a soccer team and begged me never to miss a game. I didn't, not one. Every weekend we'd sit in the bleachers, me with coffee, Emily with a book, cheering him on. About a year after the day of the reveal, I realized something simple but profound. I'd gone an entire week without thinking about Laura. It hit me while I was sitting at Lucas's soccer game. The sun was bright, Emily was laughing at something one of the parents said, and I was actually present. Not haunted, not angry, just there. That's when I knew I was healing. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had changed. It wasn't sharp anymore, more like an old scar that ached when the weather changed. That night, when the kids went to bed, I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window. The city lights shimmered, like distant fires, and for the first time in a long time the silence felt peaceful, not empty. Laura eventually rebuilt in her own way. I heard she'd found another job, smaller company, quieter life. She wrote letters to the kids sometimes, long, apologetic ones. Emily read them but rarely replied. Lucas drew pictures instead, hearts, soccer balls, family stick figures, and asked me to mail them. I let him. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's freeing yourself from the weight of hate. As for me, I started running again. I read more. I planted a small garden in the backyard with the kids. We called it our fresh start. One evening, as I watched them water the plants, Emily looked up and said, "Dad, you look happy again." I smiled. I think I am. Now, when I think back to that day, the birthday, the silence, the shock, I don't feel rage anymore, just gratitude for the truth. Because without it, I'd still be living in a lie. The truth destroyed everything I knew, but it also gave me everything I needed: honesty, strength, peace. Sometimes healing doesn't come as forgiveness. Sometimes it comes as acceptance, a quiet understanding that pain is proof you cared deeply. And now, when people ask how I survived it, I tell them this: you don't survive betrayal by hating the person who broke you. You survive by loving the ones who stayed. It's been almost 2 years since that day. 2 years since the world I thought I knew collapsed under the weight of truth. 2 years since the silence at my father's birthday changed everything. Sometimes I still think about it, not with anger anymore, but with perspective. Betrayal doesn't end when the liar leaves. It ends the day you stop replaying their lies in your head. That took me a long time to learn. I used to believe healing was about forgetting. It's not. Healing is about remembering without pain, about looking back and realizing the wound no longer controls you. Life looks different now, simpler, quieter, more real. Every morning I make breakfast for the kids. We talk about their dreams, their homework, their friends. I drive them to school, kiss their foreheads, and thank God that we're still standing, scarred, but stronger. On weekends, I visit my parents. My father still teases me about my cooking, my mother still hugs me too long, and every time I walk through their door, I feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The kind of peace that doesn't need perfection to exist. One evening after dinner, Emily asked me, "Dad, did you ever miss her?" I thought about it for a moment. Then I said, "I miss the person I thought she was. But I don't miss living in a lie." She nodded slowly, as if she understood. Maybe she did. Maybe heartbreak grows you up faster than anything else ever could. People sometimes tell me they would have handled things differently. They say I shouldn't have exposed her at the table, that I should have waited, kept it private, spared the family the pain. But I've replayed that moment 1,000 times, and every single time I come to the same conclusion: the truth needed air, lies rot in silence, and I refuse to carry someone else's sin in secret anymore. That day, it wasn't about revenge. It was about freedom. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: the truth will cost you everything before it sets you free. But once it does, no one can ever take your peace again. I lost a wife, but I found myself. I found my children's trust, my family's love, and a version of me I didn't know existed. A man who survived something that should have destroyed him. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not rebuilding what was broken, but building something new, with stronger hands and an honest heart. So when people ask what I learned from it all, I tell them this: the truth hurts, it burns, but it also cleanses, because sometimes the only way to save your soul is to let the silence finally end.